Greetings, dear listeners. When Trump announced earlier this week that he was federalizing D.C. police forces, it immediately struck me that we should be talking about this here at Wisdom of Crowds. What does the latest development tell us about the health of American democracy? Why does it seem like D.C. collectively shrugged its shoulders at Trump's moves against home rule? And where's the Democratic Party in all of this? Before we get started, a reminder to head on over to wisdomofcrowds.live and consider becoming a paying subscriber if you're not one yet. And don't forget to give us a like and review on your favorite podcast app. With all that out of the way, on to the show. I do insist that we record this. It's going to be epic. Maybe
Let's not raise expectations that can't be met.
No, yeah, they might not be met. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Shadi, I don't know. I wanted to talk to you. And when we first talked about this, I think it was Tuesday, and I was like, it would be a really good episode is talk about Trump's, nationalizing, federalizing our police force here in Washington, D.C. I felt like it was a good topic in the sense that, I don't know, it hits on questions of like democracy, I don't know, all sorts of like subsidiarity, things that are like, I don't know, philosophically interesting. The fact that like it's a bold move by the president. I want to like make sure we're not catastrophizing because I think it's more interesting than not, but I think it raises all sorts of interesting questions. But that was Tuesday, and we're recording it's Thursday night, and I feel that I still think it's interesting. It's bizarre though, right? Because it happened and then nothing happened, right? Like, have you seen a Humvee? Have you seen a man with a machine gun walking around?
I personally haven't, but I haven't been out that much, and I only got back in town Tuesday. So
Okay,
I've only had a couple days to observe, and
but I think there's nothing to observe is the wild thing.
But is that true though? Because based on the news reports, because like me walking around my neighborhood probably isn't the best way to gauge what's happening in broader DC. It does seem like there are troops, and I don't know. The reporting seems to suggest that things are going on.
Someone told me that they found some in Georgetown.
Yeah, but also U Street, there was this case of a guy who hit an officer with a Subway sandwich.
A sandwich, yeah.
And was
an officer,
apparently
though, not a man with a machine gun, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, okay, sure, but there is a greater presence on the streets, whether it's police versus like people with machine guns. I think the bigger thing and what you want is a deterrent presence,
right?
Well, in whatever form that might take, I suppose.
Maybe we should like start unpacking this because I think there's a lot of like layers to this. One is one of sovereignty, and like. It's not. It should just very much quickly point out that there's nothing actually illegal in what Trump has done. It is within his powers to do it. You declare an emergency, and there are arguments for the nation's capital in particular that you may want for a real emergency to grant that kind of power to the president. It's the seat of federal power. If stuff's happening, the president should be able to just basically declare an emergency, send in the National Guard, all the rest of that. So, should start from the premise that it's not like any of it's not illegal, except the specious part of saying that we are in an actual emergency because crime is so out of control. Crime is a thing. It's very much a thing in D.C., and I think both you and I are not complacent about it. We're not like, oh, it's fine. I think the Democrats' argument that nothing to see here, crime's going down, D.C. is wonderful, is bullshit. But still, like, it's not exactly a call into troops moment, right? Like,
It's not. I mean, the call in the troops moment would have been 2 years ago in 2023, where we had really like record highs in a number of different metrics, violent crime, carjackings, and so forth. At least not. Sorry, I don't. All-time high on non-violent crimes in 2023, but the murder rate was elevated, and it was like certainly higher than it's been at any point in the last 15 or 20 years, if I recall. But anyway, that was 2 years ago. There's been declines since then.
But also, arguably, even then, you don't call in the troops to fight crime. But okay, like, yes, point taken. It was worse a little while ago. It's still bad. It's still higher than it should be.
What bothers me, though, in some of the coverage is this idea that, it's declined since 2023.
Right.
We're fine now. But crime is still at elevated levels compared to the 2010s. That includes the murder rate, violent crime, carjackings, theft, and so forth. So we're still not in a great situation if you want to use the 2010s as your baseline, which I think is reasonable. What I don't like is when liberals say, well, it's better than it was in the 1990s, as if that should matter. I wasn't even in DC in the 1990s.
I can attest to the fact that it is a lot better than it was in the 1990s.
But that's just a weird way of judging it.
Yeah.
It's like nothing to see here, guys. If you were here in the 1990s, you'd be thankful, but that's not how the human mind works. We don't perceive things based on what happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We base it based on what's happened more recently. We all have recency bias.
Absolutely.
In that sense.
Agreed.
So I think there's something very disingenuous with those arguments, and it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Whether that justifies calling in the National Guard is a different question. I was more sympathetic to it maybe when we were just like shooting the shit on Tuesday, because I hadn't really thought about it much, and my inclination is to take a tough stance on crime, but obviously doing it this way raises all kinds of difficult questions, and it makes me nervous because it reflects the authoritarian tendencies of the Trump administration, and anything that encourages that kind of behavior, and the sense that it's always a national emergency in some way. And even if it's legal, there are norms. I know that both of us don't love the norm core, but at the same time, our constitutional order depends on a kind of respect of norms, and this kind of always pushing the limit, seeing how far you can go and testing our institutions in this manner. Obviously, that's not a great thing for American democracy. So in that sense, I'm torn. We need action on crime. We need action, actually, like, not to be frivolous about it. Maybe some people think this is not important, but I think it's important just as a symbolic thing in our nation's capital. The fact that we have homeless encampments does make me angry, and I think it's fine to be angry about that. Actually, we should be angry about that. That is not a state of affairs that should be accepted as normal, and we've been told this is the way it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. So I was heartened to see that in the last couple days, the homeless encampment near the Kennedy Center was cleared. That wouldn't have happened without the Trump takeover of the police and bringing in the National Guard. So there are positive things about this. Does the positive justify? I mean, I don't think. I think at the end of the day, my position is we shouldn't do anything that encourages Trump's authoritarian behavior.
Right.
And this is a move in that direction. Therefore, it's not justified, even if there are some positive benefits that we gain.
Right. Well, I mean, I sort of want to. I assume you think that, but like I want to sort of like unpack it a little bit, because you're not the only person that I've had the conversation with. Other mutual friends and such were just like, basically, I think, shared your initial instinct. Maybe I haven't talked to them necessarily since Tuesday, But they were like, yeah, city's a mess. Like, why not? Let's see what happens. They hate Trump, don't like him. This is bad. They may have even conceded, like, I don't like this, but like, yeah, stuff is bad. And what I guess, well, I mean, just on the homeless thing, I don't even know. I don't know where these people go. What do they do with it when they clear an encampment? Do they just like destroy
I think they're
their
encouraged
tents?
to take up in a shelter
Encouraged, or are they
to
taken to a shelter? Where are these shelters? Anyway, I don't know. I saw something in the Post story that like a lot of the homeless were like from the Kennedy Center was like, well, the bridge is right there, and I'm fine in
I don't think you
Virginia.
can force people to go to a shelter. And oftentimes the problem is homeless people don't like being in shelters
Sure.
or are not able to stay there for
Yeah.
more than a couple days before they like lose interest and then start wandering about again. So I think there is a kind of question around sustainability. Yeah, it makes the area by the Kennedy Center look better.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually address the roots of the homelessness crisis. But then I'd prefer, I think there's something to be said for people not coming into DC, whether it's politicians from other countries or tourists
Or homeless.
coming to the seat of power. What?
Or the homeless.
But coming to the seat of power and seeing those tent encampments, there's something so jarring about it.
That's, I think, what's motivating Trump. Like, it's an aesthetic revulsion.
Yeah,
like, I mean, he's expressed
as
much.
much.
Yeah. So yeah, you share that aesthetic revulsion. Look, I didn't mean to do a gotcha there about like the sort of the naughty KNOTTY, not naughty, questions about like basically sort of a humanist question about what are we doing with these people. But I guess the part that's striking to me is, and this gets back to these like to the first principle questions to me, is isn't it supposed to be that since we're all Democrats, small d Democrats, that having, that it's really should be really important to us that we have a government. And in DC, it's a particularly fraught thing because we don't have actual representation, but we have, home rule. We have granted to us in the 70s, and that it's striking to me that again, this is not real data. It's just completely anecdotal of just like talking to friends and like less political friends and things like that. Is this sense of like, the bums we voted for didn't do it, so let that big orange man try and take a crack at it. And that strikes me as, when we think about like the health of democracy, as something like really like an important moment to note, that like it's so easy to be like, well, this is not working, let's try this other thing. We've noted this before. It's output legitimacy in a way, right? And it's and as I think you've noted and many others have noted, I mean, it's a favored way of like authoritarian legitimation, right? In many ways, populists also legitimate themselves that way. It's like, only I can fix this, and then they go about it, which also dovetails to the whole thing. I think Wall Street Journal had a good editorial, I think on Monday, maybe Tuesday, I forget. It was like called him Police Commissioner Trump. But the reality is I'm not sure he's going to solve anything. I don't think, statistics will be juked. He's proven a capacity to juke statistics. And moreover, I'm not sure that the point is to fix crime. I think it's to do this kind of Potemkin Village cleanup of things. And then to
show
have
of force. It's about the domination.
It's about the domination, and nothing better than to create enemies around this, like to basically make our Mayor Bowser and our elected government the boogeymen in this. I think she's trying very hard not to play into those hands, but it's like a devil's bargain she's got also, like cooperating and all the rest of it. But I just wanted to like sound you out about that, because I think that's what's been most interesting to me watching this week is that like kind of, I don't think it's a full abdication. I don't think anyone's like abdicating, but it's a kind of, I don't know. It just feels like a shrug. Now, I just want to, before I'll let you talk, I'll say the other thing is like, it's maybe once tanks are visible, if they're visible, I heard that, they're not going to be actually allowed to even wear machine guns as they're like patrolling the streets. I don't know what that looks like, what deals are being struck. But maybe
Which we should know does happen in European cities.
Yeah.
So this idea of like, oh my God, America is so bad. This is actually more the norm in other countries that we look up to, supposedly.
Right. That some people look up to, right. Like, well, Democrats look up to, put it that way, right?
Yeah.
Like Republicans generally scorn Europeans. And so again, but this is a democratic city, so fair point. But it's maybe all I guess I'm saying is like maybe just the fact that it's not visible yet, people haven't reacted. And maybe what I'm saying here will be sort of pointless in, a day or a week when people, start realizing this is kind of a weird and messed up situation. But maybe not, right? Like that's what's been sort of bugging me this week. I just want to sort of like sound you out. What do you think about that? Like, it has been one damn thing after another. Trump has been really good at message discipline, at like not message discipline, or like the message fire hose, basically, and just spraying stuff. It's disorienting. It's exhausting. We've talked about this. But I'm again, from anecdotal conversations and from just like the mood in town after basically Trump federalized our police force overnight, everyone's like, and some people are even like, well, let's see, maybe he does a good job. And all of that is just striking to me. Is it?
It is. It suggests like a systemic failure that we've lost faith in democratic government at least on the local level. That said, the question of democratic responsiveness, it works at two levels. That you have the local government, but it's also, we voted these bums in on the local level.
Yeah.
If we're not happy with them and so forth.
That's right.
But we also did vote. Well, it depends what you mean by we, but we as Americans voted for Trump. So to say that this is contrary to democratic legitimacy.
No, he's legally doing everything. I think that's a very fair point and important to note. Like, he hasn't broken any laws in doing this, apart from inventing an emergency. Like, I think, and that's, I guess you could call that normative. Feels like more than just normative. It feels mendacious. Maybe I think that matters. That it's not just like it's kind of wild. Just take a step back. And
But there is something dark, I think, about the reaction that so many of us have had, including myself. It is not a good small d Democrat response to have. So I'm going against my own first principles here. I should be more angry about this because, I have spoken in favor of local government, of a federal system where, it's better to devolve powers to local representatives, right? I mean, that's what we prefer generally. So I can't completely explain why I'm so blasé about this, except to say that because I've lived in DC and I've seen crime, up close in some ways. I mean, or up close in that several, and I would not just one or two, but more than that. I mean, friends have been affected directly by this in ways that have been very striking.
Totally.
Including one or two incidents that come to mind in particular. So, and just to see the sense of powerlessness that even when something happens to you or happens to a friend, I don't want to make this about, that they're reticent to even call the police because there's a sense of, well, what are the police going to do? The police are hopeless.
Yeah.
What's the point of even reporting this? That sense of powerlessness, that to me is really scary. And to see that up close, and that's a kind of democratic failure on its own, that you're paying taxes in DC, you live in this city, but you don't even have faith that basic public services are going to be offered. That's a kind of third world situation to be in. Sure.
But it's also the other question is about our reactions to Trump, and this maybe is like what I'm driving at to maybe like ask sort of like the deeper question. I mean, it's one thing we've kicked around before. Also, is like, oh, if the elections, if like people really thought the elections were stolen in 2020, if Trump supporters did, they'd be out in the streets like, protesting and things like that. And the thing that you and I sort of hit on with that is like, well, it doesn't actually, like, elections being like rigged on the federal level. It might be symbolic, but also it's just like not that important to people. Whereas like local governance, one would assume, might be more important, but actually not, because actually you and I have talked about this before, and you really don't care about local politics is the other part. That's the other part that's sort of ironic about this, right? Like, I mean, voting for council members and like figuring all that out.
I have to be honest. I don't know much about all that. But,
right.
But I mean, but it's also that.
So it might be sui generis to DC, but the only thing I just want to raise, which I think is striking, just striking about like the reaction, just that part, because, and this is more broadly about Democrats, and this is the part that I think is more interesting, like elevates it to a higher level. Let's forget our collective DC abdication of adhering to democratic principles in this, and whatever. Well, maybe we don't feel that wedded to the city. None of us are from here. A lot of our cohort of like professionals don't come from DC. This is home for a while, but not forever, I think, for a lot of people. And so maybe there's all sorts of things that play into that. What is striking though is that in Trump 1, cities like Minneapolis are burning. There are riots. Trump like talks about sending the National Guard, and the country has conniption fits, and there's protests in the streets, and it's wild. And I'll just say this: like, if there's cause to send in the National Guard, it's when your local police force has in fact lost control of the situation, when in fact cities are being burned and looted, whatever again, there's insane discourse back then about like the justice of the looters and, justifiable anger, and how dare you even consider sending, troops to repress this or whatever, and, fascism, et cetera, et cetera. Trump, this time, literally here and in LA, kind of makes up a fucking emergency. I guess in LA, whatever, like at least there was some disturbance there, but certainly the police didn't have it out of control. But basically makes up an emergency, sends in troops, right? And nothing. There's no national outcry about this. So the other part,
there was a bid for LA,
in
right?
LA there was some, right? But like compare to the riots in the first Trump term, the Floyd stuff and all the rest of this, and I mean, in the New York Times, Tom Cotton's op-ed saying "Send in the troops, Mr. President," remember, got James Bennett fired from there. Like that kind of reaction, and again, that's striking to me. Like, what's changed in what, like 4.5 years? Like
wokeness is done. So I mean,
it's not wokeness to me. I mean, at least, yeah, wokeness, I guess. Is it just wokeness? To me, it seems it's like there was just like a sense of okay. Well, that's a question. Was all opposition to Trump 4 years ago just wokeness? Like, was that it?
But no. I mean, there's also just the fact of exhaustion. I think that it's hard to sustain anger for long periods of time. And I think that a lot of us have made decisions that we have to focus our attention on a limited number of questions. This is why I can't get fully engaged or even that engaged at all in DC local politics. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I already do politics for my job. I already have to follow national stuff. I have to think about bigger questions, that affect America and the world, and the world and the Middle East and so forth.
This is a big question, though, wouldn't you say? Though, I mean, this is why, I keep pushing on this.
What's a big question?
Are we looking at some kind of really weird? Fine, exhaustion. It's exhaustion, but let's call it an exhaustion that has opened the door to far more democratic decay than either you or I would have possibly posited 6 months ago. Again, what I'm not keen to do here is be like, oh, fascism is here, ring the bells, like I'm on freaking Blue Sky or something, panicking here. But it is striking. It's striking what he's like able to do. And I'm not saying like all of it is illegal and all of it is one thing or the other, but there's just like, it feels like whatever antibodies there were, never mind institutional antibodies, but just like the public is just not in the game.
We don't have a way to channel our anger institutionally because we don't have a viable opposition party. America doesn't have a real opposition party right now.
So that's what you think. The Democrats are just like, it's the fact that the party's disappeared, basically.
The party's disappeared, but also we don't have any faith in the party. So in a multi-party parliamentary system, we'd maybe look at other options, maybe smaller parties that have more energy and vitality to them. We don't have that possibility here. I mean, maybe in some ways you do when it comes to the local level with like Zohran Mamdani's campaign in New York. But for the most part, if the Democratic Party is not present, then there's just not the mechanisms aren't very clear.
So talk to me a little about that, because I'm just like, not only am I not like a party guy, I'm definitely not a Democratic Party guy. So just talk to me a little bit about that, because it's just like from the outside, it's kind of puzzling. Like,
what's puzzling?
It's puzzling that the Democrats are absent.
It is, yes.
Huh?
It is puzzling.
But so
that's why we're disappointed, and I mean, not angry per se, but
is it? I mean, where's the chicken? Where's the egg on that one? I guess is the thing. Is it that like voters like you, and again, there's like you do foreign policy a lot. There's Gaza and all of that, and it's like generational and the rest of that. But that can't be the whole story. But maybe it's emblematic of a bigger disillusionment across all sorts of other sectors. But what is it? Is it that like anyone who pipes up from the party, you just like roll your eyes? You're like, shut the fuck up, sit the fuck down. Like what's the just explain to me. Like
I think it's partly about the leadership. When you have the top-ranking Democrats being people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, it's just not a serious endeavor. It's
What's wrong with Hakeem Jeffries? Like,
he's just a joke. He's just a cowardly person who just goes where the wind is blowing. There's nothing particularly distinctive or interesting about him. He's not impressive in any way, shape, or form. Schumer is even less impressive. I mean, have you heard this guy speak? Yeah. It's embarrassing. I think it's worthwhile to bring up Gaza. I'm glad you did bring that up, because I think that, I don't want to say for a lot of us, maybe I wouldn't go that far, but for many of us, I think it's hard because as we see it, what's happening in Gaza is so world historical and of a proportion. It's just a lot worse than anything that's happening in the U.S. by sort of infinity, So I think in that sense, it's hard for someone like me who is, somewhat preoccupied with Gaza I don't have enough anger or energy or disappointment or despair to offer up in American politics. I don't have that anymore.
But can you
maybe I don't know if that's what you meant, but
well, I did mean for you, but that's what I also did mean. Like, can you extrapolate beyond you? How far do you think like that actually matters to, certainly to a measurable number of people?
I think it's measurable. I think it's a significant number of politically motivated left of center people who are younger. Gaza just seems to have taken. I mean, look, I do tend to know more people like Arabs and Muslims and so forth, right, and progressives who take Gaza very seriously. So I want to be careful about overgeneralizing this, but there are, I think, many of us. Mm-hmm. I see it everywhere in my circles.
Yeah,
that we don't have the energy to be angry on U.S. politics, on Donald Trump, the way we might have before.
Yeah. Well, I guess let me then ask you this question. To you, as an Arab American who does foreign policy and is active in this sort of stuff, when you say it's so world historical, would
it's the
erosion of democracy in America versus a client state killing a bunch of people, What's worse?
I mean, I think to me it's pretty clear. I mean, Gaza, it's not even close.
Really. So if like democracy collapses here, like
I don't believe that democracy is going to collapse.
Okay, you don't believe
here.
it, but that's not the question I'm asking. And I'm asking the questions like, why is no one paying attention? That's the question I'm asking. So I don't know. I'm not saying that democracy is collapsing.
So
here,
it's hard for me to answer that question about a hypothetical that is not actually happening.
No, but like it is wild how much has like basically sailed through. We'll see. We'll see if Supreme Court stops him on tariffs. That's going to be an interesting one. He's been stopped on nothing basically so far.
No,
Shadi.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, the courts have pushed back on a number of issues. When it comes to
we're getting an imperial presidency that like I don't think democracy is dead yet. Like we have no evidence to see all this whatchamacallit hand wringing over gerrymandering is stupid. I think basically gerrymandering is a marginal effect. It doesn't do it. Like it's basically a feature of politics. It might be a percentage here, percentage there, but like it's still not going to be an unfair election.
Yeah.
Like
there's no sign that in 2028 that Americans won't be able to vote for a different candidate or a different party if they so choose. There is nothing to suggest that will be called into question so far.
I mean, there's plenty to suggest that it'll be called into question. The fact that like Trump basically doesn't even like statistics at this point, and he's like moving people around. I'm going to be interested to see how crime statistics in D.C. are measured, for example.
No. I just mean in terms of if we as Americans, as a collective, decide to vote for the Democratic nominee in 2028, there's nothing to suggest that the election will be stolen from us if enough of us want to vote for that person. I'm just saying at a very fundamental level, we're not talking about a risk of systemic fraud or a coup. I just don't think these scenarios are likely in 2028.
I didn't think the scenario would be likely that Trump would create, like, call for, let's call a Schmittian term by a Schmittian term, a state of exception, in two major American cities.
But again, he's doing those things, as far as I can tell, legally, as we mentioned earlier.
I mean, Carl Schmitt was right too about the importance of the state of exception, and that actually any normal constitutional democratic republic will need to basically have these sorts of things in the Constitution. I guess this gets back to the sort of like norm core stuff and all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter is, you always have to have an executive that will be able to invoke states of exception. I'm just saying he's invoked it twice now. He's invoked states of exception twice for no reason.
But we already have some precedent for that during the COVID era, not just in the U.S. but also more broadly. States of exception
I would argue,
being asserted by.
But
executive.
I would say COVID had we could disagree whether it was the right call or not, but it was certainly an extraordinary situation. I think it's important to note.
Right, but but it's not in question that democratically elected leaders can overreach if they so desire, if the circumstances are right.
And so what I'm getting at is just like this. That was the root of my question. Yawn, he overreached. Yawn, he overreached twice. Yawn, whatever. Maybe crime will come down. Yawn, oh, look, he's working to dismantle home rule. Well, it didn't work well anyway. Yawn this, yawn that. And then it's just like we're further down the path towards something. I'm not saying it's like the end of democracy and all that. Well, then
it would have been our fault we get the government and the policies we deserve.
Totally agree. So again, I'm asking you about Gaza versus America.
If we can't be bothered to mount an opposition to Trump's overreach, then we deserve what we get.
Totally agree. We can't
be bothered.
Yeah, I'm just saying, again. Do you think that Gaza is so overwhelming that you will be distracted from what's happening at home until it's too late?
Obviously, if there was a some sort of military coup military coup in 2028, then that would probably be the defining. That would preoccupy me. That would be my number one issue. But until that happens, until I have stronger signs that democracy is under threat of collapse, I think the primary issue for me and a lot of other people that I know is, how is it possible that the U.S. could be facilitating a genocide?
Yeah, that's like not surprising to me and not actually all that interesting. But okay, fine.
No, but
We have different
I
interests.
mean, but
But
I'm just trying to explain.
because we've done it before and we'll do it again. But like, but let's
When was wait? When was the last time we
okay,
didn't?
Bangladesh. We've done this discussion. We don't have to relitigate this stuff. Like I like, it's fine. But I do think though, I just want to like put like a marker here on this is that I do think like the level of just like the difference in reaction, whatever. I was just sort of provoking a little bit on the Gaza stuff, but like the level, the disparity of reaction is striking to me. I have a different theory, by the way, that's not tied to the Democrats not showing up so much, or disdain by the activist side or the young people with like Chuck Schumer and the rest of this. I have like a more psychological theory. I have no idea. It's unprovable, but like let's just throw it out there.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think that, and I know you'll agree because we've sort of like kicked this stuff around before, but it's that it really is that half the country, your party, Shadi, convinced itself that Trump was illegitimate, right? That like Vladimir Putin had actually put him in power, and so they went through those 4 years in full resistance mode because they fundamentally believed Russiagate. They believed it on like an actually profound thing. I mean, we had that episode about conspiracy theories recently with Matthew Walter. I thought it was like interesting stuff there, and we can you can unpack like what does actual belief mean. But I would argue that what we're seeing right now suggests that the belief was actually probably more thoroughgoing, or at least more psychologically significant than maybe we gave it credit for, because I think it became so core to democratic self-understanding that Trump was an illegitimate president, that when Trump was proved himself before the American electorate to be legitimately reelected, and
it
the
deflated
fact
us completely. It
and
deflated us.
It destroyed him. Yeah, deflated, but like spiritually crushed something, I think. And it's
because there's no scapegoat, there's no conspiracy theory, there's nothing we can fall back on. I think that maybe with the exception of a sliver of people, and I'm not even sure about them, the overwhelming majority of Democrats, of left of center folks, of liberals, we accept that Trump won. He won fair and square, and he won by a significant and surprisingly large margin, more than most of us expected. So that what that means is we have no one else to blame but ourselves. And I think that is a devastating thing to experience and to realize.
But what's weird to me that in 6 months, at least watching from the outside, correct me if I'm wrong, but like it doesn't feel like, I feel like whatever, the country or half the country, Democrats have been frozen in amber. They haven't been grappling with that at all. For Christ's sakes, Kamala Harris is going to run again. I mean,
yeah, but that goes back to the question of, do we have a serious opposition party? What you're pointing to suggests that we don't.
Right.
If they really understood the gravity of what happened in this past election, they would have acted differently. They clearly don't grasp the gravity of it.
But so, I don't know. You started gesturing at like multi-party democracies as, you, the voter, then has more choice. You can go to different parties, more minority parties, single issue parties, and then you form a new coalition and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's well, again, my favorite thing to trot out, in 2016, Trump destroyed the Republican Party. In 2024, he destroyed the Democratic Party. But whatever, like the Republican Party has reconstituted itself like very well in the image of Trump. Why have Democrats not taken any steps, or even like insurgencies? Where there was like a news boomlet of AOC and Bernie running around, like doing supposedly pretty good rallies. Eat the rich, hang them by their off the lampposts, all the rest of that. Hey, you mentioned Mamdani, like also like very
Yeah,
much
so
in the
there is
mold
some
of
movement, but
AOC.
it's on the left flank of the party. It's not in the
Right.
mainstream of the party.
Right. So, but like Trump's wasn't the mainstream of the party, and now it's his party. So what's going on? Why
Yeah, well, I do
again?
think that there's a real chance that the left will gain more traction and reshape the Democratic Party, but that's a process that's going to take a while, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I think that that is where people are active and excited. But that's more, in some sense, it's almost more out of a dislike of the Democratic Party than Donald Trump, which is actually, I think, understandable. I think there's a real sense that the Democratic Party is more pathetic. It deserves more of our anger.
Mm.
And that's where it's going. It's not being directed to Donald Trump because in some sense, this is exactly what he campaigned on. There's no sense that this is like, disappointment comes from a sense of betrayal. And that's where I think that's why, I wrote that piece, a few months back about how I think it was titled something like why I criticize the Democratic Party more than Republicans.
Hmm.
And I still sort of feel that way. I don't really expect Republicans to be better than they actually are. This is baked in. We knew this would be how they are. This
Hmm.
is a Trumpist Republican Party. And they were clear about that. We can say that we were deceived. But there is a sense that the Democratic Party should be better, much better than it actually is. That this is a real sense of betrayal. It's also in a sense our party. So you feel betrayed over a scorned over your beloved scorning you than you do your enemy, because you know your enemy is going to be your enemy, right?
Right.
There's nothing really surprising there.
But
It's the same thing when China does really bad things. We're like, of course, it's China. What do you expect?
but
When America does really bad things abroad, we're like, oh, actually, that hurts.
okay, but like hell hath no fury, like
Scorned.
like a Democrat scorned. But like there is no, I don't see hell and fury. I just see despondency. So I mean, just to hear you talk right now, if somehow it turns out you are representative, I'd put my money on Republicans easily holding on to both houses. Like, because why the fuck would you vote for these morons
Yeah,
that represent your
as
party?
things stand, I think it's likely that Democrats will underperform unless there is a real change in the party.
Yeah, you
But
think?
what more can you, like, at some level though, you have to accept your fate. I mean, there is something about accepting your status as a failure or a victim and saying, "Hey, it's out of my hands." Like
Mm.
like I don't know, some of us have tried, some other people have tried, but like what are we supposed to do besides be despondent?
Maybe,
Or
maybe you should like really, own your leftism more and just talk in terms of heightening the contradictions. I just feel like, you know, uh, there's still a tendency among, you know, the I guess like DC progressives, not like DSA, but like DC progressives to still try and play the game. But maybe you should just like join the DSA in a way and just be like, you know what? Like actually things have to get a lot worse before they get better.
But I
Because
don't
that
like
sounds
that.
like
I've
what you're
never
saying
been a
right now.
heightening the contradictions kind of person. I don't
I
want
know,
us to
but I'm
go
hearing
through
you
that.
say just now, like you just said, like you said we've tried things, other people have tried things. What's the logical next step of like of that kind of resignation, which incidentally I think is not good for democracy, but never mind, is like the actual revolutionary kind of like DSA sort of thing. It's like heighten the contradictions.
Or the option is the Mamdani path where we say, look, let's focus on the local level. Let's try to run candidates who are compelling and exciting and charismatic and know how to present themselves. Whatever you think about Mamdani's actually policy prescriptions, which I'm not a huge fan of, but people don't generally vote based on policy. They vote based on emotion.
Yeah.
And emotionally, he's a great, compelling candidate. And I find him exciting in that regard. Can we have more candidates who are exciting? I think we can. You know, this is sort of like, I don't know if it was a joke or a bit, or a fantasy, but there was a period a few weeks ago, or maybe more like a month or two ago, where I thought to myself, like, what if I ran for something?
Mm.
And actually, at a party, I had an actual conversation with the head of a democratic grassroots organization that uh, and I actually was just messing around, but then I thought, like, let me see what she thinks about like my hypothetical candidacy.
Mm.
And then some other people got in the conversation. Someone was like, "Hey, Shaddy, I mean, one thing you could do is challenge Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is the DC sort of shadow representative in Congress.
Right.
She doesn't actually have a vote, but
Right.
she's what we have.
Right.
And that she's extremely old and seems
Yeah.
to really be struggling, and no one even seems to be aware of what she's doing.
Yeah. I
And they're like,
believe she's Biden level at this point.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. So, Shaddy, why, like, but it's a funny thing to think about. Or there's a number of other examples of like really old people where someone like me could put my hat in the ring. But then, the more I thought about it, like, first of all, uh, I don't like people enough. Like, that's always going to be my problem. I just want to be left alone and do my own thing. My personality is not really attuned to the kind of anger and passion that would be necessary to like fundraise and be out there every day and shaking hands. I don't want it badly enough. I just want to live a quiet life,
you
kind
haven't
of,
tasted
really.
power yet, though. Once you
I,
taste power,
you know what, really,
what did Kissinger say, Shadi?
power is the great aphrodisiac or
Ultimate,
something.
ultimate.
Ultimate, okay.
Yeah. Come on
But
now.
yeah, but here's the thing. I have tasted influence,
Yeah. It's not
which is
power
its
though.
own kind of power. And you
It's
know what?
not. It's not. Like
No?
power is actually changing stuff. Influence is hoping that your sweet words actually seep into someone who actually has power's ear and maybe stick a little bit. Very different.
Okay, but I have gotten the kind of attention that even some
Attention,
Congress.
that's different. That's not it. That's what I'm saying. Power is being able to, at the limit, kill someone legally. Whereas writing, you'll never get to do that. Never, ever. Like at best, you'll be blamed for someone coming to power, and that's not good enough.
Yeah, look,
Different.
I don't think I have that in me, man. I don't
Yeah.
think. Have you seen that in me? Do you really feel like
I
that's
don't
good?
know. I don't know. I mean, I think you are different than like say our friend Ben Haddad, who you could see like his love of politics, in
Yeah, I
a
don't
very
love
profound way.
politics in the way that
Um,
others do. Yeah.
and yeah, and it's great to see him thrive in politics, and it's super fascinating. But uh, yeah, maybe not. But again, I don't know. Stranger things happen. Well, anyway, so as we sort of like I don't know wend our way towards our hour here, it's I want to just like latch onto one more thing here, which is you were saying about the importance of charisma basically or of personality about like you don't even really care so much about Mamdani's policy proposals such as they are, but you're excited about his like personality and the way he's able to present himself. um I'm and I know that like Mamdani is now like playing footsie with the abundance people, but I find that like the whole abundance agenda to be like a preposterous thing, like a deeply preposterous thing. And I wanted to like sort of push you on that. Not that you've necessarily thought so much about it, but that's even better.
I
Let's just
don't
sort
think
of kick
it's.
that around because again, like I mean, we can get into the somewhat the nitty gritty. I've only read some of the essays. I haven't sat down with the book, so I also want to just like caveat that maybe if I read the book, I'd have like a deeper and more like nuanced appreciation. But I get the sense that it's a series of essays anyway, and it's again, there's like this belief. And it's interesting. Maybe this actually lets us sort of cycle back to the other interesting thing of this how we started this conversation about like output legitimacy in DC, about like at least this initial instinct by people are like, oh, our government's failing here on this very important quality of life thing called crime. so Trump is asserting legal powers and, doing this sort of stuff. Well, let's see, maybe it works. It's, I've never liked output legitimacy. I've always thought it's sort of, I don't know. Well, I mean, but obviously it works. Obviously it works very well. But it's tied to like technocracy, and like the whole abundance agenda is this idea of like, deliver tangible, palpable things to voters and they will vote for you and thank you. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
That's not how it works. That's not really how it works.
Right.
I think, I don't know if that's really their argument, that people vote based on output legitimacy. I think there's a lot of empirical data by now suggesting the opposite. One of my favorite books on this is Democracy for Realists, which argues,
great book. Yeah.
Which is basically my position, that people vote based on their emotional interests, not on their material interests, when the two are in tension. Now, of course, material interests matter and economics matter, but is that really what's fundamentally driving people at the end of the day? I'm a little bit skeptical. But I think the abundance stuff is important insofar, not because that's how to make your party super popular. I think abundance is good because abundance is good.
Right.
Like it's a good thing to have good policy outcomes.
I mean,
irrespective of whether or not that's the reason people vote for a party.
Right.
Like if Democrats win, I think I almost see it as two separate steps.
No, but to be just really pedantic, what is a good policy outcome? Like what's the like the metric that we're doing this? Now, abundance, I guess.
Democrats don't run cities well.
Sure. No, but again, like the funny thing to me about like all of this stuff, again, not having read the book carefully and like spent a lot of time, but the funny thing about like the things that I've seen that bubble up out of this is, right, blue cities and even some blue states are not run well, largely because of a lot of cronyism, special interest stuff, and quite frankly, regulation and over-regulation in a lot of ways, which incidentally is what Republicans have been saying for like the longest time. So like Ezra and Derek are like, oh, okay, and they basically just made, at least in part, like, oh, Republicans are sort of right. What's fascinating about me is like
with the
Democrats,
critique, but not with the policy prescriptions. I mean, I think their policy prescriptions are fairly middle of the road.
Right. So it's basically centrism. It's a plea for centrism, for centrist policy proposals, maybe center left because, more pro-environmental and, blah, 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 and all the rest of that.
Building things seems to me to be I would like that to be more associated with the left. I mean, I don't think Republicans have a great vision for rebuilding America. I don't think we have to say that building up our cities and having higher density housing and allowing people to build and helping poor people, because that will give poor folks more affordable housing if you're allowed to build in places that up until now the NIMBYs have prevented that. Like all of that seems to be fairly, that can be like a left-wing policy platform.
Yeah. I mean, it's the reality, of course, being that a lot of the, red tape is tied to Democratic special interests. So it's actually, and sort of nonsense regulations. Like it's not that Republicans are overregulating as a thing. It's not like NIMBYism is a Republican thing. I mean, wealthy Republicans have other like non-regulatory ways to keep the poors away from them. You know what I mean? Like there's other ways to segregate yourself from poor people that rich people avail themselves all the time. That isn't, I think, like that kind of NIMBYism. Like NIMBYism is a left wing or like a Democratic thing, much more so, I think, than a right wing thing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why if the left can be associated with building, that seems like a promising thing, because you still need a message, and charisma isn't just about whether someone's charismatic. Your message has to be compelling. Whether or not people get the policy specifics, probably not, less so.
Right.
But you want someone who has a message that's inspiring, that is hopeful, that is optimistic, that points to the future. And if you can use abundance terminology.
So if you can use technocratic, like centrist meliorism and put that in the mouth of like a charismatic firebrand. That's the goal.
I mean, it's not the goal, but it can be a sweet spot. Sure. I mean, I think you also need to have you need to also have enemies to be successful politically. You got to point to who's messing things up and say, hey, like we're opposing them. Like at some level, politics is about the us and the them. It's about friends and enemies.
Yeah.
Now the good thing about the left is they don't make minorities into enemies.
Right.
Their enemies tend to be billionaires or people who are super rich or special interests of that sort. That's probably a better way to channel one's anger instead of doing it with minorities and like.
No, but to be fair, they do, like the left does and has been, or at least maybe not, and we'll say not the DSA because they're communists, but like the left has played racial politics. So it's not like, it's the dream of representing, basically non-whites, and that they'd all vote together. This is another thing that it was like a kick in the teeth for these people. That
but
Hispanics didn't vote for this, or at least there was more defection among Hispanics and black men than they ever anticipated. And so,
in a country that is still majority white, you can't make your enemy. You can't make white people or white men the enemy.
Certainly not. But like the other part that's interesting is that I think it's the other part that like I think Trump destroys in what you said is this idea that you need to have like actually a coherent message.
No, I didn't say coherent. I said compelling.
Or I mean, okay, but like again,
I'm
not even
sure. Have a compelling message.
I think Trump had like Trump to me is just like, well, we're never going to see anything like him. He's probably like truly the greatest politician we'll ever see. I think, I thought Obama, certainly Bill Clinton, amazing politicians. We'll never see something like Trump, who's just like defies gravity all the time. And actually the substance does not matter.
Okay. But Trump did it. When I say Trump had a compelling message, I think that if I had to define it like in summary, it would be something like, we let the liberal elites govern you. They fucked you over. They didn't care about you and they messed things up despite their supposed competence. We got to drain the swamp and do something completely different. I'm going to fight for you.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
That's not a bad message.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm still sort of perplexed at this idea that like, output legitimacy based on like broadly center-left priorities is actually a path to anything.
No, I agree.
To me,
that's why
it seems
I'm
to
not
me. Yeah, that's why the abundance stuff seems really like deeply implausible to me. I mean, borderline ridiculous. And the fact that in fact your party is so excited about it. And I get it. Mamdani's like genuflected in this direction to try and like bring more like sensible people to his side as he tries to desperately pivot to the center before, being tarred as a red pinko. But I think it's fascinating how like desperately the party that you loathe for all the reasons that you loathe it is like holding on to this abundance shit as like a fucking life raft. They're like white knuckles. You can see them. They're like, this is it. This is going to save us.
It's also understandable because they don't really, but look, but I don't think that's Ezra and Derek's project. I don't think their project. Okay, we should probably read the book.
Yeah. No,
and hopefully have Derek Thompson on at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But I guess I just don't see their project as saving the Democratic Party. I think they're probably motivated by, hey, let's improve people's lives on the local level.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. But I mean, we were talking about politics. So, I mean, and that's why I'm just interested in this question of output legitimacy versus charisma and the apathy on your side of the aisle.
That's real. Yes.
The extent to which it just feels, I would have just, again, I don't know. We should have next time when Trump gets his third term, we should like actually do a spreadsheet and make bets like what'll happen in 6 months, because like I think I would have lost everything. I would have been like by 6 months the shock would have worn off. Democrats would be like agitating much more so. Congress, even as a minority party, would have been like causing all sorts of ruckus in there, like mucking up everything. Congress is dead at this point. Like the executive is increasingly powerful. Never mind your optimism about the courts, and just all of it. And again, just like week after week, I just never thought that Trump would have
well,
been
maybe
able
here
to
there's
get...
another explanation, is that for most people in the country, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah,
The economic collapse that some people predicted with the tariffs has not come to pass.
More evidence that the pointy-headed elites are always wrong, right?
Yeah, I mean, the stock market has reached all-time highs again, and it's really, I think that's the part that elites really got wrong, like all the alarmism.
Could still happen. Could happen tomorrow. We don't know.
And that's the thing. That will be the real test. And, September is usually not a great month for the stock market. So I'll be very curious to see if we have a correction. I mean, not a correction, but like a 10% drop or I guess that is a correction.
Right. Right.
Or like a bear market, which would be 20%. So we'll see. But there was a moment when I really thought Trump was losing traction and people were getting motivated, and maybe it's just that we're in the summer too and people are like trying to enjoy their lives and stuff. But maybe this gets back to the point, is at the end of the day, a lot of people just want to enjoy their lives, and they're still able to enjoy their lives.
Yeah.
And Trump isn't interfering with that as much as maybe this is just also a sign of privilege, that for a lot of Americans, because we live in the richest country in the world, a lot of people just kind of soldier on and try to make the best of what they have. And a lot of people are still living pretty good lives. And those are the elites who you would think would be driving the opposition. Right. But they're like, yeah, Trump's bad, but at the same time, we can summer in the Hamptons.
So that's then the question about again, the ultimate question about democracy. Like, if you don't care about it on some sort of first principle grounds, I think it's like, I think there's a very plausible, very comfortable kind of authoritarianism that could emerge. That's still electoral, like we've kicked around, like what still qualifies as a democracy, how much of a, monarchical elected monarchy still qualifies as a kind of democracy, as long as there's, a contestable top office, and that's the only office there is, that like most decisions are not delegated down and are like taken at the highest levels, perhaps somewhat arbitrarily, where rule of law is definitely below the executive. The executive is insulated from a lot of it. But maybe this could all be quite pleasant, and maybe it works. And so it gets back down to this whole sort of like output legitimacy thing, which I think is fascinating. And again, I think it's more of a challenge to you, who I think assign a lot of moral weight to democracy. I don't. Like, I'm just fascinated by all of this. But like for you, who assigns so much moral, like, essentially like transcendently moral worth to the concept of democracy, I think it's an interesting thing to think about and like poke at. We've kicked around the idea of what's like minimal democracy and what's required for it. And
we're definitely moving towards a pretty minimal democracy, minimalist democracy.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the way that I would have expected or hoped. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm condoning this, but it's sort of an interesting test case.
Super interesting. The most interesting test case. Again, why I'm more interested in this than the horrors that are happening across our shores. But anyway, Shadi, this was fascinating.
Yeah, good stuff.
Good chatting.
Enjoyed this, Demir. Thank you for prodding and poking.
Cool. Talk soon.
Bye.